All right, Ryan, I know that there are some Republicans who say they are concerned about this bill, but what is the likelihood this party is not going to end up getting behind it?
Well, listen, Katie, there's a very simple rule that you can basically take to the bank when you are watching things play out on Capitol Hill. And that is, if you are staring at the C-SPAN screen and it is just numbers on the screen and no one voting, that means they don't have the votes. And that's exactly the posture that we are in right now. They are in a very preliminary step in this process. This is just a motion to reconsider. And they are not voting. And the reason that they are not voting is because they don't have enough votes to even pass this simple measure that would then get them to an amendment that would then get them to the rule that would then get them to the final passage on the bill. And so the fact that we are stalled at this point is a very clear understanding of the fact that Mike Johnson does not have 218 votes to pass this bill for Donald Trump. Now, he could still get there. Donald Trump called to the White House a series of separatists, if you want to call them, both hardline conservative Republicans who think the bill doesn't cut enough. And he also brought in a group of more moderate Republicans to try and explain to them why he thought the Senate changes were what they were looking for. But the difficulty that Mike Johnson finds himself in this current position is there is nothing they can do to change this bill at this stage of the negotiation. They have to vote yes. So any offer that he provides them would be down the road. It would be another reconciliation package. It would be adding something to the rescissions package. It could be something like creating a blue ribbon commission to deal with the debt and deficit. Right now, that is not enough for the hardline Freedom Caucus Republicans who want to see significant cuts to this bill. And that's why we're just staring at a screen with no movement as of this moment at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, I think, is the day.
I love that tip from you, Ryan, that if you just see this screen right here, then you know it's because they do not have the votes. And this, again, is just a preliminary stage. Let me play a little bit from Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris saying why he's unhappy with the bill.
We could take another week to get this thing right. The Senate bill moved way far away from the House bill. Adding $750 billion to an already large federal deficit and debt is probably not a good idea.
Patrick, Svitek, I said your name wrong the first time, I apologize. You have people like Andy Harris saying, hey, listen, we can take more time. But as Ryan laid out, that would mean that they're going to miss their imposed deadline. It's going to go back to the Senate. The Senate will then have to negotiate all over again. And it's not like if Andy Harris and the Freedom Caucus get their way, that everybody else is going to be good with this, too. The Freedom Caucus wants something very different than a lot of more moderate Republicans want. They don't want what the Salters want. They don't want, Medicaid not to be cut. They don't want these green energy tax credits to remain in this bill. Other Republicans do. There is a fundamental difference in opinion on what this bill should look like.
Yeah, that's a great point. And in many ways, the problem in the House that they're having right now is not a new one. It's one that existed earlier this year, which is that you have holdouts not just in one ideological faction, but in different ideological factions. And if you reopen the legislative process here and try to give one of those factions more concessions, you're likely to upset another one of those factions. And so, this is really the same problem that we've seen for a number of months now in the House in terms of these multiple factions having problems with the bill.
All right, let's talk about the issues that the bill currently has in terms of how it's going to look to the American public. I mean, the Democrats are saying that this bill is full of problems. It's full of tax cuts for the very wealthy. It's not just Democrats. Analysis is showing this. It's full of tax cuts for the very wealthy and a lot of cuts in services for everybody else.
The haves get more. The have-nots get less. That's what that analysis is, and that's essentially what the analysis shows. If you look at the Congressional Budget Office and others, that's where the redistribution happens, and it costs a lot of money, $3 trillion over the next decade. And the question is, you've got a lot of business leaders who are pushing to get this done. They'd like to get it done. But then you've got parts of industry that are concerned, hospitals, healthcare, for example. Medicaid dollars don't go into the pocket of a poor person. Medicaid dollars go into the pocket of a nurse or a doctor or a janitor.
And by the way, it's not just a point that I think is worth making. I heard this made today, and it just puts it so clearly. You're not getting a Medicaid check every month in the mail. Not like Social Security.
Exactly.
You're not just sitting there and getting a Medicaid check. You're using Medicaid when you need to use Medicaid, when you are at a doctor's office or you are at a hospital,
or a nursing home,
when you are sick, when you need medical care. That's when you're using Medicaid.
That's right. And that's what the rural hospitals are very concerned. And some of these Congress members, even after they voted for it, they are concerned because this could really hurt some rural healthcare places. And there's just a lot in here. And remember, this is a huge bill. There's also all this money.
900 pages.
There's all this money for immigration enforcement, for deportations, for national security, for law enforcement. You've got economists analyzing what stepped-up deportations are going to mean for the job market. If you have a job market that isn't creating a lot of jobs because you've had all these, deportations, it slows the economy overall. There's just so many aspects of this.
You were looking at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, looking at what this country might, the economic growth of this country,
it's fascinating
in the next few years. What did it tell you?
Looking at net neutral or negative migration in the U.S., which would mean you'd only need to create 10 to 40,000 new jobs a month to keep the unemployment rate steady. So that sounds fine, right? Except that if you don't have a growing job market, you don't have a growing economy either, right? So one of the amazing things about the American economy has been its growth in immigration, its ability to feed its jobs machine. And that is being undone right now.
So when you can't feed the jobs machine,
you can't grow the economy.
And so that means businesses close.
Or they don't,
or they stagnate,
or they don't grow, they don't hire more people, or they don't have the business to be able to hire more people. It all becomes this vicious cycle, and it's really interesting to watch how that's going to play out or is playing out, because we are an aging population with slowing population growth already. So it's kind of this big,
there's
big
so many
issues
problem to talk about here, because you also have the Social Security issue. There's not enough people to support the people that are currently on Social Security. That will only get worse as we go further into the decade and the next few decades, unless immigration comes in and fixes our population issue, or people suddenly start having more babies, which, by the way, people say they can't afford. It's one of the issues that people are voting on, specifically here in New York City. Patrick, in terms of Democrats, what have you heard from them on messaging in this bill? Are they as loud and as vocal on it as, say, the Freedom Caucus was back in the lead up to the 2010 midterms, when they were railing against the Affordable Care Act, which they dubbed Obamacare, which, by the way, ended up being a very positive and very popular piece of legislation as it got implemented. But at the time, they found it to be a real electoral cudgel, an advantage for them.
Well, at least in the House, Democrats are putting forward so far a very united front against this legislation. And I think you asked about how their messaging has evolved. I think it's gotten a little sharper in trying to pressure individual politically vulnerable House Republicans to oppose this bill. You saw a press conference this morning on the Capitol steps where a number of House Democratic leaders, including Hakeem Jeffries, spoke, and they specifically called out politically vulnerable House Republicans and said, why would you vote for this? And rattled off statistics about how it would impact healthcare and food assistance in their individual districts. And so I do think that you've seen some sharper messaging from House Democrats really trying to peel off some of those House Republicans who are politically vulnerable in the midterms.
Well, let me play Leader Jeffries asking for somebody to be the John McCain of this congressional term.
So all we need are 4 Republicans to join us in support of their constituents, to have John McCain level courage and stand up in defense of the health care of the American people.
Ryan, is there anyone in the Republican conference who might be the John McCain?
Well, the issue isn't, is there one person? They need 4 people to be that. And the answer to the question is there have not been any indication that there are 4 people in the Republican conference that are willing to stand up buck Donald Trump on this. But the thing to keep in mind on the other side of this right now, Katie, is that the issues that exist right now, at least in the House version of where we are not on the side that Hakeem Jeffries is talking about. These aren't people that are standing up to the administration or are willing to stand up to the administration because it cuts too much. This is a group of people who are on the exact opposite side of this conversation and believe that the bill doesn't cut enough. They want steeper cuts to Medicaid. They want to make access to Medicaid more difficult. They would say under the guise of reforming the system. So we're almost having two different conversations here about where this bill stands today. It's not going to be moderates like in the form and fashion of John McCain that could potentially kill this bill today. It's going to be hardline conservatives, which again is probably makes it even less likely that they're going to buck Donald Trump. And I should point out, Katie, that they have begun making progress. They got through that first procedural vote. They're now moving to the second procedural vote before they get to the rules. So that's an indication, perhaps, that there might be some sort of breakthrough here as we get closer to final passage on this particular package.